Do you appreciate your freedom? There was a man who will make you shout it from the mountaintops. I am, of course, talking about the legendary Scottish knight, William Wallace. In this video, we will be looking at his life, his words, and his deeds to put our own modern-day freedom into perspective. Who was William Wallace? William Wallace was a 13th-century Scottish knight and one of the most prominent leaders during the Wars of Scottish Independence. Born around 1270, Wallace came from a lesser noble family, but rose to fame through his fierce resistance against English rule under King Edward I. At a time when Scotland was facing domination and political manipulation by England, Wallace emerged as a symbol of defiance and national pride. He gained widespread attention after leading a successful uprising in 1297, most notably winning the Battle of Stirling against a much larger English army. His tactics, which included guerrilla warfare and bold attacks, demonstrated his strategic brilliance and earned him the position of Guardian of Scotland, ruling on behalf of the deposed King John Balliol. However, his success was short-lived. Wallace suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298 and eventually went into hiding. He was captured by the English in 1305, tried for treason in London, and brutally executed in a manner meant to serve as a warning to other would-be rebels. He was hanged, drawn, and quartered. Despite his death, Wallace became a legendary figure and national hero in Scotland, remembered for his unwavering fight for freedom. His story was later romanticized in literature and popularized globally by the film Braveheart, solidifying his image as a courageous and unyielding champion of Scottish independence. Let's look at his massive words that moved men to give their lives for their country. Of course, we must start with "They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom." What an amazing quote. Wallace is trying to get his men ready for battle. Most of them want to flee because they did not come to fight for the nobles, who do not have their best interests at heart. Wallace rides in with his men and literally shakes the ground with his presence. He asks them, "What will you do without freedom?" He convinces them to fight, not for him, but for their families, for their legacies, and to have the opportunity most will never have, to tell their enemies they are not afraid. Maybe even pay them back, if for just a second, for all the atrocities committed. It makes me think that these were truly dark times for humanity, but throughout history, there has always been one group of people oppressing another. This is just one tale. It brings to light how good we have it in modern times. We have most of our needs met, so much so that we have time to complain about everything and anything. When I think about heritage and how many humans gave their lives before their time so that others could live a life of freedom, it makes me come to one conclusion. Did those men die for a proper cause? Are we worth it? Are we honoring their legacy with our petty squabbles? Human beings, especially in today's world, are more selfish than we have ever been. Altruism has gone out the window and replaced with the notion of self, because that is the world we live in. The world has become much smaller, and the notions of community are still found, but you have to go deep. I say, if you are willing to cut your own life short so that others can live the way you would want to live if you had the opportunity, then that is a person I revere. It is worth bringing such a person back to life, if even for a second, just with words. Quote number 2, "Every man dies, not every man really lives." This could not be more true in the world we live in today. In times of the past, people had to kick in so that the community at large could thrive, but today everything is about me, because the world and society has made it a very egocentric world. In Wallace's time, men seemed to live a very simple life, but they lived fulfilled for the most part. Today, there are more men, it seems, that do not aspire to be their best selves. They are content in complacency, and a part of me cannot blame them because this is what we are fed over and over. The amount of pressure on men today is through the roof, and most men today could not even hold a candle to their grandfathers in all aspects of manhood. Is this evolution? Or men simply giving up? A flat screen and a gaming console, along with an OnlyFans subscription, is sadly modern man's idea of fulfilled, which is mind-blowing and sad. I am not saying this is the norm, but we can see a trend with men completely shying away from the family aspirations, or else these type of dopamine rush industries would not be recession-proof. This is not a bad thing if that is not for you, but in the grand scheme of things, the notions of the past build culture, and today, culture is disappearing faster and faster, with younger generations not carrying on the traditions or being taught the ways of their heritage, in many cases anyways. I cannot judge another man's decision on how he wants to live his one life. If he wants to die for a cause not of his own, then that is his choice. But it seems most men will never truly reach their potential and unleash their talents until realization of past greatness occurs. That we have a duty to the ones who came before, who died for us, literally, so we can whine about this and that. I believe we can look at this quote and use it as a self-posed question to ourselves. We can ask ourselves, when we become old and feeble, dying in our beds, will we be content with absolutely no regrets in doing everything we wanted to in this short life? Or just what we thought others would want us to do, or the bare minimum? If the answer is yes, then we can die with no unfinished business. But I have a feeling most of us, including myself, will be coming back with some spiritual baggage. Our last quote by William Wallace beautifully segues into multiple quotes, all of the same vein. Men don't follow titles, they follow courage. This is a great line that for the most part is true, but it also leads into a quote that will explain my feelings about it. I have nothing. Men fight for me because if they do not, I throw them off my land and I starve their wives and their children. This is what I was getting to, but the words of Robert the Bruce said it better. The point being that men do follow courage, and we all wish it were that simple. But usually the truth has always been that the normal, everyday man is always forced into fighting for causes not of his own, for people he has never met or cannot even stand. This is what I mean when I talk about the cogs in the wheel. Soldiers are cogs in the wheel, simply following orders, war machines, fueling the prospects of a charismatic leader. Is there a choice? Yes and no, because in most cases, there is some type of consequence for not fighting, and this quote says it perfectly. That is why I always say, if you are going to fight, do not fight, defend. If you are defending your home, then you are always just. But if you are taking the fight to others on behalf of someone else, then you are simply an instrument being used to further someone else's agenda. Now, if that agenda lines up with your beliefs, then you are justified. But for the most part, throughout history, men have not had a choice. They fight for their nobles. They fight or suffered the consequences. Those could be anything from harm to their family, or being completely ostracized by their neighbors and their culture at large. So it is a lot easier said than done to hold your ground and refuse to fight for the cause, when there will be dire consequences otherwise. There's a difference between us. You think the people of this country exist to provide you with position. I think your position exists to provide those people with freedom. I had to end with these words as part of this same discussion, because it shows the mind of the noble and the mind of the common man. It is usually the case that those on top will use those in the middle and bottom to further their cause. That is why I always say, don't follow the Pied Piper unless you truly believe in the cause beyond manipulation. I say this because the chances are you will be fighting for the worst of us. These leaders, and we can see this exemplified in our modern times, are the worst of us. They divide, they do not galvanize. They are incompetent, bloated, self-serving, playing the part of a civil servant. Follow that? Never. We see this on every level in today's world, from local government, state, to the highest echelons and corridors of power. Nothing but corruption and people prioritizing their agendas over that of the people who they are supposed to work for and put first. They make unilateral decisions that impact the common man, and it's either action for a diluted agenda or complete and abject complacent apathy. It used to be the case that the king was the best of us. The king would be at the vanguard, like King Leonidas of Sparta. He would be the greatest warrior, leading the charge and protecting his men as an example of how a leader should be. For some reason, the king started moving further and further back on the board, finally ending up in a room somewhere, giving orders miles away from the battle. It can be said that the king is the most important, as he needs to be protected at all costs. But we can look at Wallace's quote that men follow courage, not titles. Everyone knows that the queen is the strongest piece on the chessboard, but if you kill the one space-jumping king, then it is game over. I believe a happy medium can be found, where the ones in charge can show they have a dog in the fight and skin in the game. Either way, I think we can agree, to call some of these people leaders in the modern world, I would not. I would simply call them humans, taking advantage of their position, pushing their agendas, and thinking more about trivial notions than the common man's welfare. I am not saying this is always the case. That is why I will never use words like all or even most. But it is staggering how the strong leader who leads the assault as the best of us has devolved into the worst of us, running away from responsibility. After these amazing quotes, what can we learn from this freedom fighter? William Wallace teaches us the importance of courage, freedom, and standing up for what we believe in, even when the odds are against us. His actions during the Scottish Wars of Independence show that one determined individual can inspire a nation and challenge powerful forces. Wallace reminds us that true leadership comes from conviction and sacrifice, not titles or wealth. Through quotes and stories associated with him, we learn that living with purpose is more important than simply surviving, and that freedom is not God-given, it is man-taken. His legacy encourages us to be brave in the face of injustice, to stay true to our values, and to never let fear silence our voices. We can learn that if we want something done, we must inspire, motivate, and make other people see our plight in relation to their own. We must not trust the ones in power unless they earn that trust through action and sacrifice, making themselves worthy of the position. These quotes make me appreciate my freedom, because in today's world, such a notion is taken for granted that every man is truly born free, but that is only because privilege is invisible to those who have it. In William Wallace's time, that was not the sentiment. So when looking at how we live our lives, we can appreciate the ones who fought not for themselves, but for future generations to enjoy something so much that we take it for granted and expect it. Thank you for watching, and the next time you are looking at your present-day leaders with a reluctant eye, just remember the words of Edward I, the Longshanks, King of England, and it will show you how some of them view their constituents. They're sheep, mere sheep, easily dispersed if we strike the shepherd.